Welcome to Raising Teens Off Script, a series where we look at some of the more challenging aspects of raising our teenagers into healthy adulthood. And today we're going to be looking at the theme of violence and aggression. I'm Paula Pridham, I'm a director here at Care for the Family, and with me is Mark Chester, our parent support manager. And today we are joined by an inspiring couple, Sabrina and Nathan Dennis, who run their own charity in Birmingham, which is called the First Class Foundation, working with young people. They also have 4 children of their own. So, violence and aggression, a big topic and quite a scary one, I think, in some ways, isn't it, when you start even using those words. But Mark, I know that we get lots of families coming to us and parents saying, do you know, my kids have just hit sort of 13, 14 and suddenly they're slamming doors, they're shouting all around the house. Is that normal? Is it?
Well, Paula, the teenage years are tough, aren't they? Really tough. So teenagers' bodies are changing, their hormones are raging and their feelings are all over the place. So it's no wonder that sometimes they do fly off the handle. So yes, it is normal. But things can also escalate for some, and aggression and violence can become more of a deep-seated issue, both inside and outside the home. And for parents dealing with that, it can be a mystifying experience. It can be completely disorientating, and parents can become quickly very disheartened by it. And
Nathan and Sabrina, I guess you come across this all the time in the charity that you run and the work that you do. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm laughing, but it's not a joke topic. The reason why, because slamming doors, that is like minute. So within our charity, we kind of have an area where we're dealing with like youth violence and serious youth violence that's happening within the West Midlands. It's a hard one. For any parent that is watching, please know that you are not alone. This is not a new phenomenon. Like teenagers, they grow up, they're growing up in a society that's challenging, and sometimes it gets expressed and it leaks out into the home. The whole reason why I even created our charity was through my own life experience, through my own journey. So when I was younger, I know for a fact that I had some type of anger issues. I know that, unfortunately, for some people, they would have felt that. They would have felt the sharp end of my tongue. And even more serious than that, I don't want to go too much into it. But you know, I know I gave my mum hell. Let's just be honest. I know that I've probably made my mum cry many times when I was a teenager, and it can be difficult. And when you're younger and you're going through different emotions and challenges, and you've witnessed things or seen things, so you could be having problems where you're frustrated about the lack of finances. You could be frustrated about how you're seeing your family dynamics. I know for me, things that I had witnessed growing up in my household, that caused me to have anger. And then that anger that was internal then started to spill out externally into the street, into conflicts with people. So yeah, it depending on what spectrum you are when you're talking about anger, but yeah, I'm hopefully today, parents will be inspired that actually, it doesn't matter how dark it is, there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, just speaking from a parent's perspective, we've got 4 daughters ourselves, and we know that there's times when they're going through things because they change. You know, their behaviour changes, their mannerisms change. Just take the current climate that we're living in, a pandemic, you know, and going back to school was a real big challenge for them. And, you know, my 8-year-old was really quiet and she's just not talking. I'm like, what's wrong with you? What is going on with you? Sat her down, and this sounds extreme, but it took 3 hours of conversation with our young daughter to kind of find out what's going on. Why are you so angry? Why are you shouting? Why are you all of a sudden really withdrawn? And she's normally a really bright and bubbly, you know, individual. But it's just that, it's finding those spaces in time to stop, to check in with our children and have those kitchen table talks where we talk around the table, or we go into bedroom and literally I'm in the room with her and it's like an office. And right, step into my office, come on, what's going on? And we talk.
But how many times, what's funny for me, Sabrina, I'm thinking just being honest, because I don't want to like, you know what I don't want to do is be here and not be honest. So there's been times where like our oldest has like back chat, like it could be simple, something like go and wash up, and there's this attitude, the next winding up, and I'm like, I've had to like sit down with you and says, Sabrina, how do we deal with this? Because my natural reaction is to literally go off the handles myself and let her know that I'm the parent, blah, 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 blah. Who do you think you're talking to? And I've had to say, Sabrina, can you just, I've even had to use you as an interpreter in it, haven't I? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. To interpret and also to almost sort of mediate, like, okay, what's going to happen here? What's going on with you? Why do you feel like this? Do you know how you just spoken to your dad? Do you know he's asked you to do something really simple, but you kind of, responded in a way that's out of character and not respectful? What is all that about? And then we get to a point where we can talk it through and find out where they're at. And sometimes it's nothing to do with the state of the kitchen or the state of washing up or the fact that I've asked. It's something, it could be GCSEs and the pressure of exams and revision and, oh, now you're asking me to do something else and it's another thing on top of that. So it is just finding the space, finding the time and creating those safe environments where we can talk through what's going on.
I love the reality of family life that you're explaining, really, and what goes on in your home, because I think that'll be really encouraging to parents. And what strikes me from hearing you talk about what you do is that you're being great role models to your children. You might not always get it right, but you're being great role models. I know when my children were younger, they're adults now, but when they were younger, then sometimes I would be quite shouty. I would tell them off, and afterwards I would feel pretty bad about that. But then I remember once I read this story about a young boy, and he was asked, what do you respect most about your father? And he said this, he said, when my father makes a mistake, he says he's sorry. So he respected that. And that made me really think. And so in future, what I then try to do is, because I still would shout occasionally, none of us are perfect parents, but when I did that, I would then say sorry to the kids. So I might say, I really didn't like what you did, but I didn't respond in the right way. I shouted and I'm sorry for shouting. And I feel that probably was good role modelling to the children about how to manage your anger and about the fact that sometimes we do make mistakes, but that we can rectify things.
The harsh reality is that, for me, from my experience, and even being a young person once, younger, is that children, young people, they don't do what we say, but they do what we do. So I've been even when I said in that example with Sabrina, is that I've been conscious of how do I look visually? What are the behaviorisms? And harsh reality, depending on your background or your early childhood experiences, is how you deal with situations, and you have to find new tools. But I would say to parents, we have to find different methods, and we have to be first honest with ourselves about how we're parenting and the things that we've seen. Because some of us, unfortunately, have had poor examples, and all we know to do is shout. I've seen it numerous times, just walking, and I see the mother pushing the pushchair, and she is. As a funny story, joke, I've seen parents shouting at their kids and effing and blinding to the children and saying, don't you dare swear, how you, and I'm thinking, you're telling the child not to swear while you're swearing to them. We have to be very conscious about the behavior and the role modeling that we're doing. And this is not for judgment, because I know I've made mistakes, and I've had to say sorry to my daughters and say, you know what? I think the way how I responded to that wasn't right, but it's being honest. It's about creating those spaces where you're constantly kind of like when the energy is taken out, where you just sit down and just say, look, no TVs on, no devices, and you have that heart to heart and just say, you know what, that made me feel like this, and et cetera, et cetera. I think so. It's about those, what you're saying, those safe spaces to kind of be honest about how things are making you feel.
And what happens then, and what advice would you give to parents, because you were saying about how you respond, what advice do you give to a parent when they say, well, actually, my teen is actually physically hitting me, they're throwing things, they're hitting their siblings, and the violence isn't, outside the home, it's actually within the home. How on earth does a parent deal with that?
Yeah, and that is hard. That is the worst example that we want to be, discussing. It's not normal. And firstly, you've got to make sure you're safe. Make sure you're safe. Your family's safe. You've got other children. Make sure they're safe. That's really, really important. And also, just from the work that we deliver in our charity through Kitchen Table Talks, we encourage parents to talk, to share their experiences, and finding somebody who's non-judgmental. So we have parent support practitioners who engages with parents of young people who are going through the youth offending system. And, we get all sorts of different situations that occur. But one of the things the parents always say is, I find it really hard to talk to my family about this because they might judge me, and I don't really want them to know, the nitty gritty and the horrible things that are happening in my home, because let's face it, we're used to sort of a filtered life, aren't we, at the moment? Everything's sort of put through social media and it looks a certain way. So when I'm saying my truth, I don't know if my family can handle that, and they don't want to share that, but they can share with us because we're non-judgmental, we're independent, but also that we're engaging with other parents that have been in a similar situation to themselves, so they can get peer-to-peer support, which I can't advocate for enough, talking to someone that's already been there, been through it, and also then talking to professionals who can then say, actually, we can get you help and support for this in this area. There's this service available for you, and it's okay. But it's also okay to know that you can talk about it and not take away the stigma, because we're not parents. We're not perfect parents. Nobody knows exactly what they're doing all the time anyway.
I think what you said about filtered. I'm so like. Let's be honest, like with this digital revolution that's happening, everyone's posting their best life, their best pictures, and it's all filtered and edited, and people probably took 17 pictures before they post a picture that they actually like. So it looks so perfect and prestige. But for some people who are going through real stuff behind the scenes, I know it could feel like, if I share my truth, will people judge me? And it's so important to get to a place where you can reach out for help and know that you're not alone, because many people, even those pictures that look so nice and polished and filtered, are going through challenges. I think that's important. So don't you think
definitely.
that you be honest with what you're going through, because you're not alone, and it's like people do go through challenges, and sometimes, especially for parents who could be feeling guilty, and could be feeling like, actually, am I to blame for why my child is acting this way? Don't make guilt stop you or be a blocker.
That is one of the biggest, I would say, second to crying out for help earlier. Guilt and self-shame is one of the biggest things that stops parents from coming forward and getting help. They feel that it's their fault. My child is, carrying a knife or attacking others or just being verbally horrible to other people, and they take that on themselves. So, a lot of parents will say, I feel like I'm serving this sentence, not my child. I feel like I'm carrying this burden because I failed them. Well, actually, no. Children do make their own decisions as well. Especially at teenagers, they're risky. They want to take risks, and sometimes they haven't got the ability to risk assess the situation. So they just take a chance. Sometimes it's just because they want to act out and see what will happen. Other times because, there's other things afoot that we haven't dug into yet. So, I can't advocate enough for talking and sharing.
I want to say something to people that are listening, because me being honest, so I have a phenomenal relationship with my dad now. But when I was growing up as a teenager, there was times where it's like there was disappointment and I wanted more from him. And I think through some of those experiences, it's driven me as a father now. So as you know, I've got 4 children. And one of the things that I wanted to kind of, in the Caribbean culture, there's a thing that they say, dance a yard before you dance abroad. And I'm going to try and interpretate that. So basically it means before you go out there into the community or go out there into society and try and preach or speak or talk about this type of topic, make sure that you're practicing the very principles in your own backyard, in your own home. And one of the things that I was conscious of is my own early childhood experiences, the experiences that a lot of my peers have went through, and the kind of environments that we grew up in. And I thought, you know what, I wanted to safeguard my children and really create those safe spaces. So I'm ridiculously intentional at home with the kids in it. So we do family conferences every week. Every year, I do a conference.
Annual family conference,
Annual family conference. Every week, we do a family gathering. It's we call it a family service.
Family service.
But it's sometimes it's arts and craft. It's checking in. At the beginning of the lockdown, I got this cushion, which was like a heart-shaped cushion. Got all the family, no devices, no TV on. We sat down at the floor, had lots of treats and almost like a picnic. And we passed this heart around and it says, how are you feeling? And it blows my mind how our youngest at the time of the start of the lockdown was 6. We'll start crying. And our 8-year-old used the word, remember the depression word? And she says, Dad, Mom, I feel depressed. And I think to myself, if I didn't have that time where we sat around on the floor and checked in with our children and really heard their heart and their feelings, what would happen if that was unchecked and unspoken about? My 8-year-old turned into a teenager, how would that manifest itself? And we as parents, we have to be constantly conscious about the impact of society, the impact of things like social media. The world has changed. Back in the day, we talk about the house phone principle in it, Sabrina.
We talk about having a house phone and the safeguarding that came with the house phone. So, you know, in your house, the house phone, this handheld device was in a very public space, with the hallway or the living room. And if it rang, you as a child, we never answered the phone anyway, wasn't allowed to touch the phone. My parents would answer and they'd say such and such, who's speaking please, and what do you want to do, or who is it you want to speak to? And if it was for me, well, why do you want to speak to her? Yeah. What's that about?
So you had this house phone, but now we have social media devices. And unfortunately, we know through the work that we do in our charity, many situations where children are just left to their own devices. So they've got this mobile phone where they have access to all these different platforms, have access to different types of music. They may not be connected to your values. And you have to really understand some of the music, the content that they're consuming. Remember, social media is not really filtered or there's no kind of like policies there. So they could witness or watch something that's quite violent, quite triggering. And if you're not realizing that your young people are consuming this content, this information, then all of a sudden you're seeing your teen slamming the door or giving you back chat, and they've just got this energy that you know wasn't like that. Sometimes it can be coming from outside sources, so it's about constantly checking in with your children to say, all right then, what is happening? And I've seen through the kind of higher end of the spectrum with the young people that we support and families we support that are kind of involved with youth violence, it's just so many missed opportunities. So now it's this big rage that's manifesting into, unfortunately, on the saddest part is death on the streets. Is that like actually when you go back, there were so many missed opportunities. I know you talk about it in Kitchen Table Talks about, you know, some parents have identified the issues within their children, but never got the support only when it happened to crisis.
Only crisis.
Yeah, you said that earlier, weren't you? You talked about those underlying issues, and I guess there are so many reasons, aren't there? I mean, and I'm just thinking of perhaps undiagnosed additional needs that are causing anger. So it's actually sort of maybe a medical issue that might be going on. But I guess there's other things as well that cause the anger, Sabrina. I mean,
absolutely, absolutely. And that is one of the things, second to the guilt, as I said before, you get parents that have been crying out for help from, you know, a child sort of entered into school, and it's at school where most things are identified. So they just seem overly disruptive, and they use that term for lots of different things. And I think disruptive, well, they wasn't disruptive at home, they were fine with me. And that carries on as a trend that hits them all the way through, and they get to secondary school and now they're disruptive and they're excluded, and there's all these other things that happen when they hit to a crisis point of offending or carrying a weapon or getting into a fight. And it's at crisis point when all the interventions are available. So, you know, they just quickly diagnose that, oh, they had ADHD, or there was something there that was missed earlier on. And parents regularly say, you know, I said that when they're 7, there was something, but it was never taken seriously because, you know, I as the parent was supposed to just know what to do about that, but I didn't know, and they didn't know where to go for help. So it's really about being a strong advocate, but also knowing that there's support out there for you when you have got things that you're noticing. That don't stay quiet, don't be shy, and, you know, don't feel like it's embarrassing or it's, oh no, I've done something wrong. No, sometimes we really do need to cry out for help and get the support that we need as many times as you need to. Yeah.
I think it's also worth acknowledging, isn't it, that some parents might feel that they've not done a bad job, really. You know, that they've made some mistakes, as we all do, but actually they've tried to instill some values, and then suddenly, out of the blue, totally unexpected, their child does something that they don't know where it's come from. And I think it's, you know, I mean, children sometimes, teenagers do that, don't they? They test the boundaries, they take risks, as you mentioned, Sabrina. And I think it'd be a bit like trying on shoes sometimes. You know, you see a pair of shoes, you know they're not going to be that comfortable, they're going to be a bit unsuitable, but you try them anyway. You might wear them for a bit just to see what they feel like, and then they get consigned to the back of the wardrobe. And I think teenagers are often like that themselves. They want to try somebody else's values. Hopefully, in time, they'll put them to the back of the wardrobe and return to the values that they've been brought up with.
And anger, it does work both ways, doesn't it, with our children, but also with ourselves, you know. And I guess, how do we then learn as adults to manage that? Is that possible? I think you mentioned something about taking some time out and pausing.
Yeah, so one of the things that we advocate for in our home as well as in the work that we do is stop, pause and reflect. And in our team, we do it in our team meetings, don't we? So we have a Monday and a Friday, a check-in and a check-out, 2 wins and a challenge. And that means that you have to think about what's happened in the week, what's caused you to be excited, happy, but what's caused you to probably be angry, frustrated, gotten you really, annoyed, and let's conversate that through. So we do that in a professional space. But also we have to take time out as parents ourselves. And I know I'm saying this and parents are really thinking, what is she on about? What time have I got to take out? But it could just be the first thing in the morning. Like, one of the things that I do for myself before the day even begins is I wake up, and normally it's when Nathan does the school run, I'm really, really blessed actually. So when he takes them out on the school run, he's normally left by 7:30. Between 7:30 and 8 a.m, I literally have that half an hour to myself to just stop. I get my coffee, I get my journal, I like to write, and I reflect. I think about, how do I feel today? What have I got to do today? How do I feel about all the things I've got to do today? And I kind of put my life into some kind of context. I look at what it is, but I try and take out all of the emotion that could be attached to that. So I know, for example, in work, I might have to do loads of financial reports that I don't particularly enjoy, but they have to be done. But how do I feel about that? Okay, I don't like it. I've accepted that I don't like it, but I have to do it. Okay, I'm at a place of peace. And that's what I do in the morning before I start my day. Some people pray.
So
pray?
Yeah. So one of the things and this is me being so honest and transparent, let's just be honest. So my oldest is 16. I learned probably very early on in parenting that if my children wake me up, there could be a problem in the house. Yeah.
No, there will be a problem.
I can be quite ratty if I'm woken up. So what I started to do was sacrifice my sleep and wake up before the whole household wakes up. And based on being faith-based, I would take time out to pray, to journal, just to be still, to do breathing exercises with myself, like breathing in, breathing out, and just reflecting. Sometimes, I know it don't look like it, COVID, right? But I would exercise in the morning. And I'd find that if I got myself into a positive state, I was able to receive the children, almost receive them. So they would wake up into a more positive environment, and I'll be ready to go and good morning, blah, blah, blah. So it's about, for parents, is create safe spaces for yourself that may be going for walks more, talking more, breathing exercises, whatever it is you need to do to make sure that your energy levels are right.
Well, thank you. And as we're sort of drawing our time to a close now, I mean, it's good to end up with some really good things we can say. So that is one good thing, isn't it? Create that safe space for yourself to look after yourself and be able to self-manage yourself. So that's a lovely idea to be able to go out and do that. And also, I love that you get up earlier than your kids now. I think that's fab.
I love it as well.
I'm amazed that they didn't also then decide to get up early and still come and jump on you. I mean, that would have been a good one too. But no, that's great that works. And you're right, you need to find what works for you, don't you, as your family. What other sort of tips would you leave, do you think?
Yeah, I definitely think so. Waking up, carving out space, that stop, pause and reflect time. I also think have good people around. It takes a village to raise a child. I know we're quite insular nowadays. We don't really live far from our families and our friends, but actually no, bring people in to find a person or an organisation, if it needs to be, that you can really talk to and share your truth with. You'll often find that once you start sharing your truth, people will say, well, I've done that. That's happened to us. And this is what we can do to tackle that.
And the kitchen table talk.
And the kitchen table talk. So in your home, it doesn't have to be formal. It's not a conference table, but just sit down. You could be cooking or preparing a meal. Kids could be doing stuff at the table. And it's that conversation in between. The TV's off. There might be music playing in the background. It's really culturally and psychologically acceptable. It's not what's going on here, Mum? It's just silent and we're talking. But there's a vibe, there's an energy, there's an atmosphere, and banter and talk and discuss. How was your day? What did you do? Who did you fall out with?
That actually sounds fun.
Yeah.
Sometimes strategy sounds really boring, but that sounds fun.
It's warm and inviting.
Yeah. And Mark, have you got any? What would be your? What do you want to throw into this mix?
Yeah, I think. I mean, it's really encouraging to hear all this, isn't it? And I hope it's encouraging to parents, really. And I think this idea of speaking up, a trouble shared is a trouble halved. There's some truth in that old saying, and I think that's one of the hardest things to do. But actually, there's some help out there. There are people who can give advice and take advice, and often the sort of the anxiety around sharing your story, the bark's worse than the bite. Actually, it's a lot better when you do it. Some of the things, like we have an anger management course here at Care for the Family, a programme that people can take part in. I think that's a really positive thing to do for both teenagers and adults to do that together. And there's lots of those kind of things out there from all sorts of different charities and organisations. So I think just getting some advice from your school, your youth worker, your church or faith community, wherever it is, I think it's really important to just speak up, get some advice and get some support for you as a parent.
Go on then. We're going to squeeze one last thing out of you, Nathan.
I really want to, and I almost want to turn to camera with this point, but I won't. But I want to, for a parent that may be really struggling, I want to say don't give up. And the reason why, because I almost like wanted in tribute to my mum, is that I'm coming up to 40 years old, and I have my charity. I'm a founder trustee of the charity. I run my own consultancy business, happily married to this amazing woman here for 15 years, coming up to 16 years. And I am now privileged, I would say, like through how my life has transformed, through faith and through a lot of hard work and discipline. But I want people to understand that I was a person that, because of my choices and because of violence, I caused police to come to my mum's door. I've caused my mum have to go to court and witnessed me as a juvenile get sentenced. That's connected to violence. I know I've made my mum cry. Sorry. Like, I know how ridiculously hard it can be for parents. Like, I know that my mum I've shed a lot of tears, kind of thing. And my mum didn't give up. She kept praying. She kept encouraging me. She says, Nathan, there's more for you. And 17, 18 years later, and I can see how my life's changed, turned around. I just really want to encourage parents to say, please don't give up and reach out for help if you need help, because I believe with all my heart that there's diamonds inside of those young people, and they may be looking rough right now, and they might be, really staring you up the wrong way. But just don't give up. And I just wanted to share that truth, because it just wouldn't be right of me to come in on here and not give that truth of the extremes that I've put my parents through. But we're out on the other side, so don't give up.
Nathan, that is the most fabulous way to end our time together, and thank you. Thank you for your honesty, and also thank you for, you are an amazing example that children can land the other side safely when they've got the support. So thank you so much. Thank you to Anne Sabrina for what you're doing with your charity. It's been great speaking with you today. Thank you. Well, thank you for joining us today, and I do hope you found it helpful. If you've been affected by anything that we've been talking about, then please do take a look around our website. You'll find lots more information and support there. As a charity, we support families of all kinds, from birth right the way through to bereavement. And we do that across the UK and beyond. Again, the website is a great place to discover all we do. Now, as a charity, we rely on donations, mostly from individuals. And without this support, it wouldn't be possible to produce programmes like this. Many people give by way of a regular monthly donation. And if you're able to do that, we would be so grateful. And to do that, go to cff.org.uk/donate. And to say thank you for becoming a partner with us, we'll send you a pack of resources for you and your family, or for you to pass on to others. Anyway, I do hope you join us again at our next Raising Teens Off Script. Until then, goodbye.